The old clock tower loomed over the town of Avum, its shadow stretching long and ominous even at midday. Locals whispered tales of its strange power, a power to bend time itself. Elias Thorne, a historian obsessed with Avum's past, scoffed at these stories until he discovered a hidden chamber within the tower's base. Inside, an intricate mechanism of gears and crystals hummed with an almost imperceptible energy. A single obsidian dial dominated the chamber, marked not with numbers but with constellations. Intrigued, Elias traced the constellations, his fingers brushing the cool obsidian. A sudden surge of energy knocked him back, the air shimmering around him. When he regained his senses, the town square outside the tower was bustling with activity, but it was different. The architecture was unfamiliar, the clothes people wore were strange, and the very air hummed with a strange energy. He had traveled forward in time. Elias, initially overwhelmed, began to cautiously explore this altered Avum. The changes were profound. Technology was far more advanced, yet a sense of unease permeated the streets. People seemed distant, their interactions devoid of the warmth he remembered. He discovered, through fragmented news reports and hushed conversations, that the shift hadn't been a smooth evolution. A catastrophic event, a great fracture, had reshaped the world. He realized, with growing horror, that the change he had witnessed was not a positive one. Driven by a need to understand, Elias returned to the clock tower's chamber. He spent days meticulously studying the obsidian dial, its constellations shifting subtly with each passing hour. He discovered a pattern, a sequence of constellations that could be manipulated to shift time. He understood, with a chill of dread, that his initial accidental jump forward was not a random event. He had inadvertently triggered the Great Fracture. The weight of his accidental action pressed heavily on Elias. He knew he had to undo it. The task was daunting, fraught with peril. One wrong move, one misplaced constellation could send the timeline spiraling into further chaos. He spent sleepless nights poring over historical records, cross-referencing the constellations with events in Avum's history. He spent weeks meticulously rotating the obsidian dial, his hands trembling as he felt the power surge through his veins. Finally, he believed he had found the correct sequence. With a deep breath, he began the process, the chamber filling with an intense light. The air crackled, the ground vibrated. He felt a sharp, disorienting pull, a sensation of being torn in two. When the light subsided, he found himself back in the familiar town square of his own time, the familiar architecture and the familiar warmth of the people reassuring him. He had succeeded. The Great Fracture was undone, its impact erased from the timeline. Elias left the clock tower, never to return.